Alyvix Service is a great way to regularly monitor the performance of your critical applications. And the latest versions of Alyvix Service have some really great features. But Alyvix Service didn't just come out of nowhere. For almost a decade, we've been on a long evolutionary path to get here. So today I want to show you how Alyvix has improved over time, why you'll want to keep up with the latest features, and how to migrate from Alyvix Server to Alyvix Service. Just joking. In the beginning, there were simple monitoring systems, and most were based on Nagios. Nagios was so early and thus influential that even if you wanted to build your own monitoring system, you would still follow the Nagios protocols, so you could also use all of its many community plugins. Our first version, Alyvix Check, was no exception. We wrote a command check for NetI3 in Nagios format that then called NSClient++. But configuring anything this way except for the simplest workflows of Alyvix test cases wasn't quick or easy, and it scaled badly for multiple agents. There were also some missing features like on-demand report generation and scheduling across multiple servers. And that leads us to the next evolutionary step of Alyvix and virtual monitoring, Alyvix Server, a standalone web app monitoring complex workflow tests to measure application performance. Paired with a modernized version of the core Alyvix software, Alyvix Server expanded from running single test cases to running sessions, where multiple test cases can be scheduled together. Alyvix Server ensures those sessions run on time and their connections remain alive. As each test case runs in its session, Alyvix Server also collects the data they generate, stores it, and makes it available over a modern REST-based API with a well-documented interface. Finally, Alyvix Server introduced visual reports created from that collected data, allowing you to see dashboards and graphs and compare side-by-side screenshots of the expected versus the actual results. But Alyvix Server was missing full authentication and didn't include a permissions-based authorization system. In addition, nodes still had to be configured and accessed one by one. Not very scalable. While Alyvix Server was a huge step forward, so was the next evolutionary step, Alyvix Service, which addressed several limitations. First, there was a lot of reinventing the wheel with the latest visualization technologies, since many monitoring systems already include software like Grafana to display monitoring data. And IT administrators don't like duplication. It leads to overloaded system resources, more software updates, and a greater potential for security holes. So Alyvix Service doesn't include its own front end. Instead, it's a module that can be integrated into any monitoring system using its REST API, taking advantage of the host's visualization system for displaying both monitoring data and reports. Second, Alyvix Service has no graphical configuration interface, which is now also managed via API. This is important for monitoring systems which want to keep a unified graphical interface for their users. Third, Alyvix Service has a number of invisible infrastructure improvements, including a more robust internal database and the use of efficient protocols like NATs. And finally, Alyvix Service has come full circle to the old Nagios days, now supporting individual monitoring checks for special cases, in addition to the large-scale monitoring of complex applications. So I hope I've showed you that Alyvix Service is superior to Alyvix Server, and of course to Alyvix as just an integrated check. Well then, why wouldn't you migrate? Well, consider first that Alyvix Service is under active development, while Alyvix Server has been deprecated. That means Server won't receive any more bug fixes or security updates, and no new features will be added. And this can be really important in an enterprise environment. For example, Alyvix Server was restricted to operating over protected networks because its API wasn't fully secure. Alyvix Server also scales poorly as the number of Alyvix nodes increases, because you have to log in separately to manage each node. With Alyvix Service, you can control them from a central point, namely the monitoring system it's integrated with, saving you a lot of maintenance time and effort. For managed service providers, the multi-tenant capabilities of Alyvix Service let you deploy visual monitoring for all your clients at once, while keeping them separate from each other. And rather than being a separate web app, Alyvix Service is completely integrated into the host monitoring system. You won't even notice when you go back and forth. And finally, migration is a simple and easy process. Switching from Alyvix Server to Alyvix Service takes at most an hour, and most of that time is to bring security in line with modern standards. You don't even have to worry about your existing Alyvix test cases. They can be left exactly as they are. So I hope I've convinced you that now is the time to migrate to Alyvix Service. Well, now you're faced with the next question. How do I migrate? The process is basically to uninstall Alyvix Server, install Alyvix Service, and then configure Alyvix Service in the new monitoring system. Let's look at each step in more detail. To uninstall Alyvix Server, you'll need to back up any security certificates currently in use. Stop Alyvix Server within Windows Services, uninstall Alyvix Server in Windows Settings, and then remove the server directory. Next, you'll need to install Alyvix Service on each Windows Server machine that will actually run your test cases. Those steps are to upgrade Alyvix Core and then install Alyvix Service according to the standard installation instructions. Install PostgreSQL, install Alyvix Service, configure the security certificates to communicate with the browser monitoring system, and start Alyvix Service in Windows Services. From there, you'll need to go to the Alyvix interface in your monitoring system and set up the nodes, the session workflows, and the test case path. Once configured, all that's left is to activate your sessions, which will launch your test cases. And there you have it, a quick history of using Alyvix for visual monitoring and the why and how of upgrading to the latest version, Alyvix Service. It's time to migrate.